Welcome to the Nerd Journey Podcast. Our goal is to help you, the technology professional, accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective in your existing role.
We want to bring listeners like you the career advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers.
I'm John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, sharing co-host duties with Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_.
We're two former IT operations guys who have moved on to pre-sales roles with technology vendors. We have our opinions, but we also like to highlight the journeys of others and see what we can learn from them.
We'd also like to ask for your feedback to make this a conversation, not a one-way broadcast. Email us at nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com or DM us at nerdjourney on Twitter. So come join us on our nerd journey.
Let's take a trip.
All right, welcome to episode 348. As we stated last week, we're trying something a little different for these two episodes.
Last week, we introduced that trend of flattening organizations, and oftentimes this creates a huge increase in the number of people reporting to a single manager.
So we're inviting a number of past guests to answer questions on this trend.
Last week in episode 347, go back and listen if you missed it, we introduced this new reality, exploring the trend itself and the immediate consequences for your career path and the team culture. In this episode, we'll focus entirely on actionable strategies for thriving in this environment.
Great. So let's open up with the opportunity of being that player coach. To kick off part 2, we're going to hear from Shailvi Wakhlu, who we originally spoke to in episodes 210 and 211. Shailvi is a leadership speaker and data consultant with experience building and leading large organizations, including structuring of job levels for career paths. She's also the author of Self-Advocacy, Your Guide to Getting What You Deserve at Work. We asked Shailvi, as organizations flatten and there are less manager roles, does this create an opportunity for people to become a technical lead or team lead to help the manager scale? We'd love to hear any perspective you have on how the team lead, tech lead, or whatever player coach type exists changes as a result of the organizational changes.
So I have been of the belief that even without organizations flattening, even without there being less manager roles, I would say even in companies that have plenty of manager roles, there's always been the opportunity for people to show that either the group leadership mindset, so, you're a team lead, you're a project lead, something like that, or you are a technical lead, so which again shows more focus on the technical or architectural aspects of a role. You're more focused on the technical standards that the team needs to adhere to. I think anything that you do that helps your manager manage the team, scale the team, grow the output, or just have better focus, I think has always been, a good way to get your foot in the door for those type of roles in the future. I've worked at companies where internally there was a lot of people who wanted to eventually get into management roles. And even in times when there was a lot more hiring, there was a lot more manager roles being created. But even in those times, you can't accommodate everybody who wants to do this eventually. So people who would step into these type of roles, I think they'd always have a leg up. If I see somebody is doing a fantastic job at managing a project, I know that there is a subset of the manager responsibilities that they're able to handle. If I see them doing team events, if I see them stepping up on technical leadership, defining standards, all of these things kind of point to that same larger skill set. And I always encourage that even if there's no formal capacity in which you can do this, even if you create your own opportunity and showcase that, hey, this is a space where I see our team could improve, even without the manager title, I think you have plenty of options to contribute at that stage. And definitely in this type of a market where there are less manager roles, I still think, at some point the market is going to bounce back. And it makes sense that at that time, there won't be enough people who have been managers. There won't be enough people who have done performance management, who have done technical skill assessment, who have done hiring, all of those pieces. If you have done bits and pieces of it, and if you can showcase that you have the right mindset to step into that full management role, I think it's a great way to start. before I was a manager, I was the hiring lead on my team. So it was a team of 12, and I actually set the standards. Like I defined, here's what we're going to measure during interviews, here's going to be our rubrics and all of those type of things. And it made it that much easier for me before I transitioned into an actual full-time manager role.
To get another perspective on this, we reached out to Neil Thompson, who we originally spoke to in episodes 193 and 194. Neil is the founder of Teach the Geek, an organization that helps technical professionals in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics improve their public speaking and presentation skills. He's also the host of the Teach the Geek podcast. We wanted to get his take on communication within this current climate. So here's what we asked Neil. How do you think team leads or technical leads, maybe that player coach type role, plays into the development of strong communicators? Where do they help people where managers can't?
So perhaps the players don't see themselves as the managers because, they're not managers. So they're not trying to model themselves based on managers. But the player coaches are way closer to who they are in their current role. So if the player coach is able to better model what they want these players to do, and those player coaches are adept at showing these technical staff members the benefits of improving with their communication, and the player coaches are able to show these technical staff members the opportunities that they've been able to get based on them improving their communication skills. In fact, who knows, maybe even the fact that they're a player coach is based on the fact that they are adept communicators and they were identified for those opportunities. If the technical staff members can see this being modeled for them in real time, then they'll see the benefits, and then they'll be way more likely to want to improve their communication skills themselves because they see the benefits of doing so.
And we return to Neil for a follow-up question. What challenges will managers face trying to develop good communicators when their team is huge? And what can they do to be more effective when this happens?
The first thing is, because the team is big, a big challenge is going to be reaching all of the various employees and getting them to buy in to the idea of improving their speaking skills. And I think telling them their realities of the situation, essentially, if you were to improve those skills, it will increase your visibility within the organization, and opportunities tend to come to those who have greater visibility, especially if that is the case and they can see this happening in real time. They'll be way more likely to want to develop those skills because they don't want to be the technical people who are passed over for opportunities based on something that they can control, which is developing their communication skills, especially when it comes to communicating with the decision makers who can provide those opportunities. I think that's where it starts. And then another thing, with Teach the Geek, I talk a lot about the importance of organizations developing speaker training programs for technical staff. And a challenge there is getting the consensus from the technical staff on what the priorities of such a training should be. And I think a survey offered to the technical team members could be really helpful in that, just listing out the various things that the training could address. Things like how to best engage an audience, how to better balance technical depth and clarity, how to minimize jargon, etc. Just having them listed out and having the technical staff determine which should their priorities be, and then making sure at least the top 3 of those priorities are in such a training for the technical staff.
We also wanted to know from Neil, how can the individual contributor develop those strong communication skills so they can build rapport and communicate the value of their work to a busy leader?
Especially if they go through a speaker training program that's geared specifically for them, looking for opportunities to practice those skills if they're so motivated would be great. But I think it's also useful for an organization to offer practice opportunities for the technical staff if they were to go through such a program. And an easy idea, I think, is a lunch and learn. And with lunch and learns, the people who went through the training get to give presentations on what they're working on, for instance. And not only is it useful for their boss to hear it from them, and other people within their organization could hear from them as well, especially other non-technical people within the organization, it can be really helpful to hear what these technical people are working on. An example I often use is if an HR person who is responsible for the first screenings of job candidates for technical roles, if they can sit in on such presentations, they'll hear from the horse's mouth the type of work that these people with technical roles do. They'll be able to do a much better job of screening those candidates, those job candidates for positions, as opposed to relying on job descriptions that in many instances be quite old.
We wanted to return to Shailvi and ask, what are your top suggestions for succeeding as a manager of a large team in this environment?
I think that's a very interesting question, especially in today's environment where just the definition of a larger team has changed. If you're a manager of managers, you may have the layers under you can be quite a lot. But I'm talking about direct reports, like people who directly report up to you. And I would say a few years back, that large team definition was, more than 8. Nowadays, I think it's very common to see people who have 8, 10, 12, 15 direct reports and nobody's blinking an eye. I myself, my last company, I had 6 direct reports and I had a pretty large org of, more than 30 people under me through those layers. So I would say that, succeeding in that situation, especially where you have a lot of people directly reporting to you, it takes a lot of intentionality to get that right, because you have to again recap, like, what is your role as a manager? One is to provide clarity for your team to make sure they are aligned with business goals, to make sure they know what is going to be rewarded, what is not rewarded, things like that. The other big piece is making sure you are available to help grow the careers of everybody who has taken a chance on you and is putting the fate of their careers, a little bit of it is in your hands. So how do you make sure that you do those two pieces successfully? It's very important to streamline your communication, to streamline your information sharing in both directions. Have you created a situation where people know what to expect from you in terms of what you're going to communicate, when you're going to communicate it? If there's some, hidden things going on in the company, are you going to be able to give them context soon enough so that they can recalibrate? Or are they going to have to claw that information out of you? And similarly, if your reports are facing something, or maybe, their reports under them, but if they are facing challenges, have you created a situation where people have the psychological safety to bring up challenges and concerns to you as soon as possible so that you are in a better position to help them solve that? Do you feel that they are comfortable sharing with you what their professional goals are, what they're hoping for to work on in terms of opportunities, in terms of growth areas? And are you giving them that positive and critical feedback that will actually help them get to those goals? So I think that's the piece that you have to become tighter on, making very intentional decisions about how you communicate, what people can expect from you. Do you have time reserved for sort of like unexpected things? And most importantly, how do you delegate? So when you have a large team, there will always be opportunities for people who eventually want to move on to managerial roles or just leadership roles in general. Are there pieces that you can delegate where people can take over some parts of your manager responsibilities? And in those cases, always make sure to publicly give credit, to make sure that people don't feel like, you're just getting them to do your job. And, that's why it's very important to make sure that you are public in your appreciation for people who help you in the smooth running of the team. And here again, I would caution managers to be very explicit about if it's a non-promotable task, if it's a housekeeping task that nobody's ever going to get promoted because of, do not outsource that. I think you do a disservice to people's careers if you're asking them to do sort of general housekeeping and you're basically asking them to do it above their existing job, and you're never going to consider that work important enough to actually think that they're performing at a higher level. So delegate work that is actually useful, delegate work that is actually helping them improve their skills and their visibility in showcasing that they have leadership capabilities that they can exhibit to everybody else.
And then one more for Shailvi to dogpile on top of that last question. How can leaders create a culture that's impactful within their organization when the structure of the organization is designed to allow less time spent with each person underneath a leader?
I love this question. I think it's very, very relevant today with a lot of managers that have too many people directly reporting under them, and there's just not enough time to get enough information flowing both ways in both directions for the benefit of the company. And this question, I definitely have a bias towards it because this is part of what I do as a consultant. I work with organizations that want to build powerful teams to optimize for, higher profits, productivity, and performance. I feel that, leaders sometimes tend to anchor on the limited time they have with all the people who report up to them, that they sort of just spend that in getting status updates. And I think the flaw with that plan is that one, it's very one-sided, just asking people, what are you working on or what's the status? That is something they can share with you in an email. That is something that can be updated on a Jira board or something similar like that. I think the part that I encourage leaders to think about is how do you create a situation where everybody on your team understands the link between their work and business success, where there's no ambiguity about it, where they clearly understand that, this is the part of my job that is going to help the company succeed. And that is how you build that excitement with people. And people, when they feel that ownership, that, they are responsible for helping the company make more money or lower their risk or something like that, like they take ownership and accountability, that it's not just, I finished this project. It's like, I helped the company succeed with XYZ goal. Creating that culture of transparency, open communication, I think that is something that takes intentionality on the part of the managers. It takes repetition where you keep showcasing how you're rewarding work, how you are setting expectations. You can't have unevenness, rewarding behavior with somebody and then ignoring it with the other person. So leaders, if you have limited time, take that time to really understand the motivations of the people who work for you. How can you help them in their careers? How can you help them better understand this current opportunity and what that opportunity entails? And making sure that there is no lack of clarity that is not being addressed. And also making sure that you showcase, like how you show up as a leader is something that is more important than anything else that you say. Are you accountable for your own actions? Are you taking ownership of larger pieces that are under your area of ownership? When leaders can sort of structure what they want to spend time on, it goes a really long way.
And in closing, we wanted to talk actionable advice for the external job market. For our final question in this series, we'll hear one more time from Abby Clobridge, who we originally spoke to in episodes 292 and 293. Abby is the founder and principal consultant at Fireoak Strategies and has a deep expertise in the realm of knowledge management. So we asked Abby, in a tough job market, what do you think job seekers should be doing to stand out that maybe they aren't doing right now?
The job market is just miserable right now. I'm not really sure I have anything new to add, but a couple of ideas. One way to stand out is to treat your job search like a portfolio project. Don't just say that you're learning, but show what you're doing, what you're learning. Build something tangible, whether it's a small automation or a dashboard or even a short write-up of how you'd solve the problem. Another idea is to host micro conversations. Invite 3 or 4 peers or mentors or former colleagues to a short virtual or in-person roundtable. It shows initiative strengthens your network and often benefits everyone in the room. Finally, practice visible curiosity. Post about what you're exploring, maybe an AI tool you tested or a lesson from a book you just read. Learning out loud not only builds your knowledge, it also signals to future employers that you're engaged, adaptable, and a connector.
And that brings us to the end of our 2-part series on navigating the flattened organization. We want to say a big thank you to all the guests who were kind enough to share their insights. If you want to hear the full-length interviews we mentioned, you can find our discussions with Shailvi Wakhlu in episodes 210 and 211. Don't forget, Shailvi is the author of Self-Advocacy, and Nerd Journey listeners can get a 15% discount on her self-advocacy course using the link in the show notes. You can also hear our previous conversations with Neil Thompson back in episodes 193 and 194. And don't forget the Abby Clobridge interviews in episodes 292 and 293. What did you think about this roundtable series? Are there questions we forgot to ask, or questions you'd love to hear someone's hot take on in a future show? Send us an email, nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com.
Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at BJourneyman, for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.